Welcome, Sandman Nation. We are the St. Louis Syndicate, ready to bring you all of your Super Bowl plays. He's Brandon, I'm Nate, and we are ready and fired up for the Super Bowl. Eagles and the Chiefs. Go Chiefs. So this episode, Brandon, we're gonna do some. We're gonna talk a little bit about the game. Focus a little bit on who we think is going to win. What we think the totals are, those things. But we're gonna actually spend a little bit of time on the prop bets. Sandman has a great prop bet game out, and we thought it'd be fun to kind of talk about a few prop bets. Just some quick ideas from us, and let you go out and successfully win all of your prop bets this Super Bowl season.
Can't wait. It's gonna be a blast.
So who you got, Brandon? Chiefs, Eagles.
Look, if I got to force a pick, I'm gonna lay the points with the Chiefs. Um, in the pools that are still going on that we've played in the entire season, I kind of had the opportunity to put my weight behind the spread or the total, and I'm going to go with the under on the total side because I'm worried about Saquon, just to be perfectly honest. And the offensive line that goes along with him. I think this ends up being a situation where the Chiefs' offensive line ends up being the weakest of the four lines, and it's a game of whether Reed and Mahomes can figure that out. Where are you at?
Yeah, well, if you're a follower of Sandman.com, you'll know that I'm hanging my hat heavily on the Chiefs. I am all over this three-peat. And go read the article I wrote. It's outstanding. Shameless plug. It'll tell you all about
Yes.
why the Chiefs are going to three-peat and that you guys can just quit blaming the refs and people like that. But to give you some context behind it, I really think this boils down to the great ones get it done and a little bit of a disrespect factor. I think at this point in time of the season, the X's and O's are what they are, right? These teams know what they do. They've played each other before, and the X's and O's are outstanding. Reed's good at it. Sirianni's fine. Spagnola's an amazing coach. There's a lot of positives, right? And to your point, the offensive and defensive lines are outstanding. But when it comes to the Super Bowl, the stars shine. And there are stars on the Eagles side, but there are legends on the Chiefs side. And yes, Tom Brady did not win every Super Bowl he was in, and there's a pretty good chance Patrick Mahomes will not win every Super Bowl he's in. But there is history to be made in a three-peat, and Patrick Mahomes, I believe, feels disrespected. He's not involved in MVP talks. They're in the transition year from being the lovable Chiefs to the evil Empire. And they're kind of wearing that with a little bit of a badge. And the Chiefs always tend to show up come playoff time. And what did they do the last 2 weeks is they did the exact same thing that we expect them to do. They just win. They beat the teams that we think they should beat. They beat the teams we don't think they should beat. Allen and Lamar beat each other up for the right to go to Arrowhead and lose to Patrick Mahomes. And it's becoming a theme, and I understand why people get tired of it, right? You just do. And in my article, you'll see, ultimately in 10 years, people are going to look back on this dynasty and go, wow, he was pretty good. That was pretty good. But right now, he's not getting his due. And I can tell you that they find, great ones find internal motivation. Tom Brady acted like he was in his fifth Super Bowl, and he acted like nobody loved him and nobody wanted him, and he was the last guy. And by that point in time, we know better. We know that he was not that guy. He was a champion. He had Giselle on his arm, yet he continued to walk around and tell people, I have a chip. Michael Jordan would look for reasons that, guy looked at him funny to drop 40 on him. And he found ways to be motivated. And I think that there might just be enough noise in the NFL and in the rankings of the people, the commentators, right? People out there with the Kermit the Frog sipping, oh, I'm Patrick Mahomes, I smell like Kermit. Oh, you know, I'm not MVP talk. Oh, we're evil. Oh, the refs, out there pictures of Mahomes kissing. Listen, the dude plays football, but he's not blind. He sees this shit, and he sees it because apparently he was really upset when Luka got traded. At midnight, he's up tweeting that Luka got traded, his
Yes.
favorite player from the Mavericks. So he's looking at social media people. He knows what you're saying, and the great ones find a way. And what he's doing is he's talking to Kelsey, and he's talking to Hunt, and he's talking to Chris Jones, and he's being like, guys are disrespecting us. And he goes to Karoflis, and he goes, let's prove him wrong. And for some damn reason, this is what happens. So 1.5 points is nothing for a win or a cover. Mahomes is going to win this thing. They're going to three-peat. And Sirianni's going to go down as a coach who couldn't get it done without a fluke. Because I think Reed's going to outcoach him, and Spagnuolo's going to outcoach him, and Mahomes is just proving that he is the next elite. Whether that's Terry Bradshaw, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, or now Patrick Mahomes. It's how it rolls. So that's my 2 cents. If you want more, go check out the article because there's a whole lot of more good insight in there.
That's very well said. And look, it's a very good argument. And I, I the first thing that started me down this feeling much better about the Chiefs winning was last weekend after the games were over. I saw this graphic about all of the coaching pairs who have went against each other twice in a Super Bowl. And every time, including obviously Tom Coughlin over Bill Belichick, the head coach that won the first one won the second one. To a
Wow.
man. It was like 6 or 7 times that this has happened. And every previous time, the coach that won the first one repeated with the second matchup. So,
That's interesting.
obviously, small sample size, right? But we only play one of these a year. So the sample size can only get but so big, right? Um, so it pushed me in that direction of feeling much better.
Yeah.
And,
It's a great stat. This adds to my
yeah,
beliefs. I love it.
but I do when I go, do I think it's more likely that they win or that we stay under? I'm just leaning a little bit towards that under. And I will hand up go, I haven't bet the spread in a Super Bowl um, since the year before um, McVay and Belichick went head to head in the Super Bowl. That was the first time I got the genius idea to take the under, and they scored like 16 points between the two teams. And that was the first time I won Ben Harper. Um, and since then, I have just stuck with I'm just going to hammer the under. And it's worked like 70% of the time, I think.
Yeah,
Enough
pretty good
that
odds.
it's a much better shot because obviously one of the things that we're, going to tie into when we go talking about the props is how these lines get shaped up over time. And that, by the time we get around to Thursday or Friday night and we lock some of the lines for the pools that we play in,
Yeah.
um, there will be pressure on that over for the last week and a half. And to then get in on the under gives you that little extra bit of edge to outside of just complete chaos and a bunch of, defensive touchdowns. You should be fairly well protected to the upside with defenses like this.
I traditionally don't go just under over and stick with it. I try to weigh each game, but I do like the philosophy especially if it's worked 70% of the time. I have to look at it a little bit closer. But at the end of the day, for me, I don't have a numbers opinion on that. So from the St. Louis Syndicate, you need to parlay your bet Kansas City Chiefs -1.5 and the under, and you should be in good shape. So
Hey, that's our two-teamer of the week for sure.
two-teamer of the week, I like it. So hey, we got some fun stuff to share. Let's talk a little bit about the game within the game. All right, so here we are. I believe you guys can see my screen. I'm going to pull it up and navigate it a little bit. Bill has put out for us in Sandman Sports a prop game that is allowing you to go and place any prop bet you want. And as I scroll, you'll see that your options, Sandman Nation,
Are near endless.
are near endless. 450 options. So this is my registration form. I have not filled out my registration form yet. I'm going to be doing that. I probably should do it live, right? But no, I'm not going to do that either. We're going to go through these, and we're just going to talk about a few of them. If you have any numbers or anything, Brandon, you know that you want me to call out, let me know. But I just kind of wanted to start at the very top. It's probably the most popular one. We could talk about heads and tails. That's number one, but we're not going to do that. The MVP. We talked about it a minute ago. It has to be Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, but it could be one of these others. Give me your 2 cents on this award and the odds that are out there and how it's generated.
So I I also think that um, Pat and Saquon are really the two that have a shot at this, right? That the way that the two offenses work outside of just, you know, anytime you're making a bet, you have to obviously understand that we can have crazy stuff happen, right? If you have Chris Jones or Jalen Carter or Karloftis and they strip sack and score a touchdown, and that's, one of the only touchdowns in the game, and then, okay, yeah, your bet shot. What are you going to do about it? But if you're going to put actual money on this thing, you have to go, um, I have a thought about how this game is going to go, and then bet it. Or, or your other option is to look at these lines that don't have to be locked in until 3:30 the day of the Super Bowl and see what the live lines move around like and try to pick off some that you're getting value on and say, I'm going to spread it around. I'm going to try to hit some value picks and pick up stuff that these odds are better than the ones you can get on the open market. That's your other option. But for me, when you're going MVP, you go, I'm going to pick who's going to win this game, and then I'm going to pick the most important player on the game.
So yeah, deadline for these props are 3 p.m. Pacific. For us,
3 p.m.
that's
Pacific.
1
Okay.
p.m. So about
Other
4 hours
way,
before the game time. But I mean, think
5
about the
p.m.
time you've got to watch this move, which is part of the reason why I'm not going to fill it out right now either. I want to see how these move and how they shake. But for me, to your point, when I talk about prop bets, Brandon, I think it's important for our listeners to know you need to have an understanding of how you think the game's going to go. So how I just described in my opening monologue about the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, to me, if I'm going to place a bet in any way, it cannot be on a player only other than a Kansas City Chief. And unless I think, to your point, that Chris Jones or Karlaftis or somebody is going to do something like have 4 sacks and a forced fumble that's a scoop and score, there's almost no way it cannot be the quarterback in this particular instance. Because if Patrick Mahomes, let's just say Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift's in the house, everybody's wanting him to have a successful way out of his career. If he scores 3 touchdowns, which is a prop bet, if he scores 3 touchdowns and has 140 yards, there's still a guy that threw it to him that probably has his own set of rushing yards and a whole other set of yards that go along with it. It's almost like a quarterback award. Who is the best quarterback? But I know, I mean, Dallas Cowboys, Larry Brown, years ago was
Sure.
the MVP of the Super Bowl because he had a pick six, and it just happens. But you know, common sense says if you're going to spend hard-earned money on it, lean towards the way you think the game is going to go.
Yeah, because the rest of these numbers are here to kind of play with you, right? Like to take some money out of the market. Um, like the being the D Hop fan that I am, I do wonder about him sitting down there at plus 10,000 and going. He's just been kind of hanging out for the last 3 months, and do they figure out a way to break him open? And does he make, some sort of sensational play that pivots the game and that gives him some edge? Because one of the things you do have to remember with, the MVP, uh, in comparison to everything else in this list, is that people are voting on it. So,
True.
you can mathematically have the best game there and go, that's the best game. And then they vote another way because of the flow of the game. And then, then you got a problem on your hands.
Absolutely. If it's a low scoring affair, 13 to 13, nobody's had explosive offensive statistics. The defenses have been great. Let's say that it's 13 to 13 going into the fourth quarter, and D Hop has got 60 yards receiving on 4 catches. And then on the final drive, he snags a ball with one hand in the back of the end zone that scores a touchdown to win it as clock expires. Patrick Mahomes is still going to get it for throwing it to him. Anyway,
Sure. Oh, very possibly. Like you're not wrong that like that's why the odds are the best. Because as we scroll down here, you start seeing numbers that are pretty big,
yeah,
and that obviously draws your eye. And you start going like, oh, like here's where I can make a big jump. But usually those big numbers are there because of the number of variables that have to happen together to make something like that be the outcome. Where the easy stuff, that's why the line's short. And you got to make some decisions on, for especially a prop game like this, where you go, you're only going to make 10 bets.
yeah,
You're going to pick 10 and you're going to see how much money you can amass.
yeah,
So you either try to get a whole bunch of them right, or you try to throw a Hail Mary on one or two of them. And, you got to kind of weigh that out and see if you can work your way to a game state that says, I think one of these higher numbered picks can work out for you.
yeah. So hey, there's some really good ones on the page right now. Yeah, I pulled them up on the screen. These combos are fun, right? Player combos. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
player combos are where you can find some value. Um, I think that taking a look at something like number 26, AJ Brown and Travis Kelce to combine for 200 receiving yards at a plus 500 is not horribly unreasonable. It could be difficult, but you could very easily see AJ getting 110 in 3 catches, and you could see Kelsey getting 90, 95. That's within reason. I think another one that is really, really within range here is probably the one where it talks about AJ to score a receiving touchdown and Saquon to score a rushing. I like that one a lot at plus 325. But Jalen Hurts tends to throw a deep ball to AJ Brown. So if you're really feeling risky, number 28, AJ Brown to score a receiving touchdown and Jalen Hurts to throw one over 39.5 yards is a plus 800. That's not a bad place to lay a point, in my opinion, because we've seen them connect on a few 33, 43, 38, 37, 42. There's been some connections there. And we know that the Chiefs can be susceptible if they get caught in a Spagnola blitz.
That's for sure. Like, you, look, like, that's one of the reasons that I have the risk around. trying to take the over or, bet on a bunch of overs on the prop side is that, both of these defenses are the lead for their team this year,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to it. And, that's where when we kind of go farther down on the list and we get into some of the total match results where we have the opportunity to do the over or the under, that's where I'm probably going to be focusing a lot of my opportunity to look at, total passing yards, total passing and receiving yards. These ones where, we have teams that are shooting at um, thinking that they're high flying offenses because hey, we're through, we're to the Super Bowl here, but both of these teams rode the back of their defenses being able to get stops and their offenses being safe with the ball. And so we've got a lot of fun mixes in here where, total match touchdowns. Okay, 4.5. So if you have a thought that, hey, maybe we're on the underside of it, well, then there's not a lot of variables to scoring or not scoring touchdowns. Like that is that's the goal of the whole thing. And if you think the defense is going to be able to stop them, you're working in the same direction as the side of the sport that you feel like has the upper hand in the game. Now, obviously, 225, not a huge splash, but it's pretty good plus odds versus some of the other plus odds that are out here for kind of one variable sorts of picks.
Let's talk about a plus odd that we both thought was kind of interesting to think about. Bet number 119. The Kansas City
Yeah.
Chiefs, the first drive of the game. Will there be a successful fourth down conversion? A yes is plus 1100. A no is minus 3,000. Now, why is it so high? Because you win if they don't even get to a fourth down. You win if they punt. You win, but that's not any fun. The fun is if they convert on fourth down. First, they've got to get to a fourth down, and then they've got to convert the fourth down, and then it's got to be in the right territory, and then it's got to be a place where Reed is willing to go for it. But we've seen them want to come out aggressive, and if it's borderline early in the game, where they can take a risk and think, well, we'll let our defense, try to stop them, and even if they score, we're only down one score, we'll come back. I feel like that's an aggressive point that we could see actually happen.
Yeah, I like that one a lot because you have two different types of um fourth down philosophies between these teams.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles, hey, if we get to fourth and one, fourth and a short two, hey, we can push this across and most of the time get it. So, hey, you know, outside of the Chiefs very famously just stopping a variation of the tush push, um, the Eagles have been very successful at it. The Chiefs, they have more on the side of if if we've got it somewhere in like the 3 to 5 yard range to go, that's where they have the opportunity to run guys in all kinds of different directions and then have a bunch of dudes with good hands standing in zones. And that's where I feel like we're getting some uh, plus EV on that. Plus, was that 1,000 or 1,100? Either way,
1100.
the the point being that like they have a much wider range of plays that they're willing to go on fourth down and can be successful with.
I totally agree. What other props, Brandon, do you have that you think is important to call out?
I think the first touchdown score is always fun, right? Because that's one that a lot of people like to get in on. It's something that conceptually makes a lot of sense. Where you go, hey, um, one of the things that we were talking about when we were kind of prepping was that when you watch these games throughout the season, and you go, hey, there's going to be 14 or 15 or 16 games, or maybe even less than that, each week. And you've got to decide how you're going to bet and where there's edges across all these games.
Hmm.
Um, and you have to take into account that each one of those teams has a different um, game plan depending on the week and the competition and what they want to show to them and who's a little banged up. And when you get to the Super Bowl, both teams are firing everything they got. So you can finally kind of sit down and go, here's what I think is going to happen because everybody is going to play up to the best they can put on the field. The coaches, the players, the preparation, the game plan, all of it. So this is where you can look at stuff and go, who's been doing stuff for these teams? Who's been the the players that have been moving the ball? And you can say, hey, we got Saquon, and we've got Kelsey, and we've got Hunt, and we've got AJ Brown that are kind of the top four across the two teams that are the power players right now. And to be able to look at those four and kind of clear the rest of the space to the side and go, here's what I think is going to happen. And, if you're more of a Philly guy, maybe you go the Philly direction. If you're more the Chiefs guy, you go more the Chiefs direction. And then you only have to make a pick between maybe two guys that you think are the top option. Or you can slide down and go, hey, I, I think a long shot's due, and you can take a flyer. But there's a lot of ways to kind of go at it. And there are some that are maybe higher uh, expected value than others. But when it comes down to one game and you're playing in a closed loop like this, sometimes you just got to go out there and lay a plus 3,000 and hope you get out to a good start ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I find it interesting, right? I think at the at the plus 425, Saquon feels like the right play because I, I I don't have this information off the top of my head, but I bet he scored the first touchdown in every game of the playoffs for him. So if the Eagles are
I
going,
think so.
I think so too. If the Eagles are going to score, more than likely it's going to be him touching it. I think they're going to come out and try to establish the running game early. I don't think that they're going to be trying to get crazy and flip the ball around to AJ and Devonta early. I think they're going to try to say, we're here to punch you in the mouth because that's what Philly wants to do. So if they're gonna, my opinion is an educated guess on that. It's going to be Saquon or Hurts that's going to score that first touchdown. The Chiefs, on the other hand, if they get the ball and they can march down and score, yeah, Hunt is the guy that's going to probably run that thing across. But Mahomes can throw to anybody, man. He could throw that thing to Worthy in a reverse. They could throw it to Kelsey and a little dump through the middle. Hopkins could catch one in the back corner. There's a whole lot of things there. One thing that Patrick Mahomes, I was listening to the announcers last week in the championship game. I thought it was interesting that they said Andy Reid doesn't call his number much, if ever, since his ankle injury when he called a quarterback sneak.
Right.
I thought that was interesting because they called his number about 3 or 4 times when it mattered, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns. So that's going to create one of two things. Either A, it's going to create lanes for passing for Mahomes to kind of break out in the open and do his little fake thing and dump it over, or he's going to go get the score himself because it's Super Bowl, it's the biggest stage. And you go back to my Kermit the Frog comment earlier, and he's got a chip on his shoulder. So
Yeah.
if you want to take a flyer on somebody, I think that plus 2,200 is a pretty good flyer on Mahomes to score the first one. I also really like Noah Gray at plus 3,000 because he seems to be that third option that Mahomes just finds when he's in trouble. Um, in the back of the
He's
end
been very
zone.
sneaky.
Yeah.
You're very right that, like, if Philly decides to over-index on removing Kelsey from the game, um, there's been a bunch of teams this year that have decided to do that, and it's really allowed Gray to get his.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's a weird thing when you go, you look back and the Chiefs have some history, starting Super Bowls now and, the way that they go about it. Um, and you have to balance how much you think that that is indicative of what they're going to do going forward. Um, but the fact that they ran that like Le'Veon Bell play from back
Hmm.
in the day where they get the offensive line out and let him sweep behind it, and they did it with a quarterback,
Yeah.
um, should worry Philly.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they make some adjustments to stop that from happening, and thus you don't see Mahomes really running at all. But I would agree that that's that, and again Hopkins hanging out there. That it's very odd to just go. We're gonna take a wide receiver with some of the best hands in the league, and he's just gonna be a decoy. He's just gonna run downfield and drag a cornerback with him. When we get to the Super Bowl, um, makes me think that either um, defenses are doing something to remove him from the game, or Reed has been doing his thing where, hey, we don't show you the good plays until we have to, and now it's time to show everybody the good plays.
I love it. I think that's important. I wanted to call out a couple of more. Brandon, let me know if you've got a couple more you want to show out. I do like total defensive or special teams touchdowns. Um, Actually, I like it for both of them, Kansas City and the Eagles. For some reason, in Super Bowls, um, there's usually a pick six, a scoop and score. There's something weird that happens. We've seen it just more often than not, that does and can potentially change a game. So having a defensive or a special team touchdown is not bad for plus 400 money. I'd like to see that up around plus 800, but that's just kind of where it is. Anything else you would like me to? Oh, the bands are interesting. I want to go to the bands.
Yeah, that's a good one, and I got one other one that I can throw out
Do
there,
you know
and
the number? Miguel
on the
gives you
one I'm looking at, it's
450
133.
of them.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have this pulled up. I've got his other sheet, so
Here you
it's
go.
around 133.
So I'm at the bands right now.
Okay.
Let's talk about the bands. You are Mr. Under Guy. So
Yeah.
talk to me about these bands and how they impact your decisioning.
I'm going to be in the 21 to 30 range. Um, because you get the payoff along with it it being in an area that I think is reasonable for the outcome here. Um, Under 20 seems like a real stretch, even with two strong defenses. Um, but to me, you go under, you stay in that 21 to 30 band, or if you want to go over, I would stretch it all the way to the 71 plus personally. Because I think if the defense don't hold up, then it's open season, and we got dudes just running every direction. So I don't think to my mind, the way that I'm thinking about it, that in between ground where we just barely get to the over.
Okay. I Man, I just keep looking at this and I think probably what's going to happen is this thing's going to be more like 34 to 29, which would put us into that 61 to 70 range.
Yeah,
Um, and so that's where I would sit at the plus 500 odds. I think those feel pretty good. When these guys played a few years back, it was 38 to 35. The defenses were still pretty good back then too. Not maybe not as good as they are now, but they do tend to score. Kansas City, on average, of its last several Super Bowls, are at 25, 38, 9, and 31. So they're at the 9 against Tampa Bay. And, they're hovering around that 27, 28 scoring range.
Yeah, that's the hard one that I had to throw out because
Yeah.
that's the most like this game in my mind.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at these two teams, they haven't exactly been playing like that all year, but I feel like that's the closest doppelganger to
Yeah.
this defense is that Tampa defense.
Agreed. Agreed. That's a great point. Um, Other than that, there's been a couple Super Bowls that have been bigger. Like when Philadelphia played New England, it was 41-33. Um, when I'm looking at some of the scores here, not a whole lot though that are New England 34, Atlanta 28. That was the 28 to
That was the
3 game.
backbreaker.
That was the
Yeah,
backbreaker game.
that was a big swing for me.
A lot of these games don't go over 50. So to your point of 49, that's a pretty good number to stay under.
Yeah.
I like where you're thinking there, but I don't know if getting down it. I don't see very many games that are ending though under 30. So just I'd caution that.
Risky. It's risky.
It is risky. Risk reward. Risk reward.
Right.
All right,
Yeah.
and that other number you wanted to look at, my man, was
Like 133-ish.
133 ish.
Yeah. It's first Philly drive to concede a sack.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That one I like. Hurts holds the ball way too long.
Oh,
So, if you want to, extrapolate that and try to find some other places where you can go, I think he's going to hold the ball too long and that's going to cause other things.
yeah.
This seems like the most straightforward one that we're going to have a first drive. Is somebody going to get through there and knock him down? I think so. I think 240 is a pretty good price for that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that there's real signal in the direction of this came apart in his hands last time,
Hmm.
and you can be as much of a robot as you want, but when you get back out there and you go, I need to make something happen. I got this extra guy here next to me that's going to help me do it, but to a certain point, the same way that you talk about Mahomes having a chip on his shoulder, I'm sure Hurts has some version of that on his shoulder as
For
well,
sure.
going, I'm the guy. I've been the guy for all the way back into college, and I've been, shuffled around, and people moved ahead of me, and me moved ahead of other people, and people didn't believe in me, and this is my second Super Bowl, and I'm going to go out here and do something, and that leads to Spagnola taking advantage of that and getting a guy free and running him down. So that's the other one that jumped out to me. I
That's
think
that's very good.
feels nice.
I think that's going to happen at least a couple of times. So I think you could probably go to look also at some of the sack, um, the props for the sacks.
Yeah, sack totals,
Sack
stuff like
totals
that.
and stuff, and really lean on the Kansas City side. We know who gets in there. Jones is in there. Karoflis is in there. And maybe just take a look at some of those and see if you can find the right odds that make sense to you. Because if Hurts gets under pressure towards the end of the game, I think that's also where that hanging on the ball a little too long will come into
Uh-huh.
play. And you might
Yeah.
see you hit a couple of those in the last quarter where he's pressing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to definitely be looking at those, well, the props that can go in the direction of not scoring points. That's
that's your
that's what I'm going to be
strategy.
pressing on.
I love
Yeah.
it. So hey, that's a really long segment for us just to sit and banter about props in a game. I think the ultimate, we boil this down. It's real simple. Chiefs in the under. That's where I'm at. Is that where you're at?
This is going to be really pleasant to come back to if those both hit. That's for sure.
Yes. And if not, we're gonna have to do something like some kind of some kind of like losing a bet or something. I don't know. We're gonna have to come back and
Sure.
apologize to Sandman Nation. But I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
have fun, Sandman Nation, with all your picks. They've got the prop game is so fun. Get out and do it. I think that there's a lot of cool things there and give you a lot of opportunities to win. You can compete against me. You saw my sign-in sheet right there, so I'm looking forward to taking you guys down. I'm Nate. He's Brandon. We're the St. Louis Syndicate. Good luck with your bets.
Cheers.